progress and action. Right now, as we're going through this COVID-19 pandemic, there are a lot of people who are struggling, a lot of people who are out of work. There are so many different effects that this has on people. One thing specifically that different states have been advocating for, different local and states have been advocating for, is for a rent suspension, because people don't have any money to pay their rent right now. People are out of work. A lot of people hurt in a lot of different ways. So what we wanted to do today is to highlight some people around the country who are advocating for a rent suspension. And I actually was contacted today by good friends in Minnesota who have been participating in what do you call it, in the car, basically mobile protests, right? So everyone's in their car. I'll let them tell you about it. So welcome to the call, Angie and Steve, calling in from Minnesota. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
All right. Hi, my name is Angie, Angela Jerome-Tuckner, and I live here in Minnesota. We have had a few car protests here, and I've just been involved. I've been involved politically for quite a while, and I just want to talk about this event that we were part of today.
Right, and I'm her husband, Steve. So, yeah, we heard about this because of our local DSA chapter. They have a housing justice branch, and so they highlighted that there was one last week and there was one this week. And yeah, I mean, it's nice to get out of the house, when we're all quarantined, and why not go to a protest?
Hear, hear. I'm with it. So I know that this is the second one, the footage, and we're going to be showing the footage on here that you sent me earlier. This is from today in St. Paul, but there was also one last week in Minneapolis. Do I have that right?
Right, that was in downtown Minneapolis, around the U.S. Bank building. So we kind of went around the block, around and around and around, honking horns, had signs, blocking some traffic. But because of COVID-19, there's not a lot of traffic actually. So we're not really blocking that much traffic. But yeah, it's a safe way to to protest.
So I'm sure it's difficult when you're used to. I mean, we all go to protests and we can kind of make a number in our head and say, okay, this is how much a crowd looks like. I'm sure it's harder to quantify in cars, but do you have a sense of about, maybe a rough estimate of about how many people that you saw participating in these?
How many cars?
How many cars? Well, it was about a block long.
Yes.
Where we went round and round and round in circles, and it was like 2 lanes, and they kept trying to say, let's do 1 lane, but you couldn't. There's too many cars to do that. So it's probably 30, 40 cars, I would say. And then there was a number of marshals, people that were directing traffic. I mean, there's probably like 15 marshals.
Yeah.
Something like that. So altogether, I don't know, 100 people, between 50 and 100 people, I would say.
Right.
Something like that. So yeah, it'd be super awesome if you could actually do like a really big one. We were talking about we had like 1,000 cars or something. That would be great. But and there was the police, sort of blocked off the other ends of the street. So we didn't get harassed or anything like that. So.
Right. And that was, I know that, at actions that I've participated in before, there are marshals to help kind of direct people. And then there are also police liaisons. Was that part of how you guys prepared? I love that you guys, that everything was set up as to, make it go smoothly. And I know a lot of times, having police liaisons kind of helps to explain, people who are.
There probably was, and they usually have
Yes.
those. Yeah, they're pretty organized about this.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. That's amazing. I mean, to get that many people out, especially with what's going on and everything. Now, Steve, just on a side note, because Angie had told me that you are, within your neighborhood, communicating with people in your neighborhood about kind of resources and updates and things like that. Could you tell me a little bit about that? I think that's amazing.
Yeah, so we actually have just lived in this neighborhood for a year, and I just thought to take, people talk about things like mutual aid, and so I thought, well, why not try to get to know some of our neighbors, particularly when we are all stuck at home anyway. And so I went around, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago, a couple times, and I would just like knock on doors and then sort of stand back so I wasn't right in their face. And I just got phone numbers and emails and just made a spreadsheet. And then I've sent out two sort of newslettery things, and they were just sort of, I set up a form for people to, give a little basic information, what they want to get out of a group like this and stuff like that. And then also just offering like different articles and things about, like for example, how you should, if you bring groceries into the house, what's a good way to clean them up before you put them away. We kind of got a system now here. And anyway, and then also, I don't remember how it came up, but I mentioned something that Angie makes some masks. She's a sewer. So we asked if anybody wanted them, and we got 17 orders.
Something like that.
Yeah, right. So Angie's been working hard on making masks.
Getting these masks out to people.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I love that.
So I think it's been, it's been good. I think, we live in kind of a poorer neighborhood, but I also find that, even in the neighborhood we used to live in a little suburb, inner ring suburb, people don't really actually talk to their neighbors all that much. And so, I think that anything you can do just to, not about politics or anything, just like talk about, how are things going? And I think this is one of the main reasons I want to start it was there because there's some older people that live in the neighborhood, and, we want to make sure that people are keeping an eye on them and making sure they're staying safe. And I don't know what'll come from it, but maybe there'll be a little more, neighborliness, out of it at least. So.
And I also sent an email to both of our legislators, to our state senator and state representative, telling them what we were doing, and I invited them to, I sent them a copy of the newsletters that we've sent so far and asked them if they had any further information, if they would want to add to our newsletter. I haven't heard back from them yet, but hopefully I'll hear back at some point.
Right. And also I've been meaning to connect up. In St. Paul, they have these neighborhood associations that are sort of funded partially by the city. And so we're in an area called the North End, and there's a North End neighborhood association. And I know the person who's the head of the board of that. And I talked to her early on about this, and she put me on a Facebook group of other people who were kind of doing similar things, but I haven't really connected up with them yet. That's something I plan to do. I mean, it'd be nice to have like sort of a network of, I guess you'd call them block clubs or whatever. The only thing I don't like about the block club thing is a lot of times they turn into kind of like little neighborhood watches, which can be good and bad, right? And particularly also they can be sort of homeowner heavy, where, people don't like renters, don't like those renters, versus the homeowners. So I think you have to be careful on how you do it.
I think it's great, especially when we talk about organizing and mobilizing. I know that you said that, of course, is you're not sending anything political out to people, and I totally get that. But I think that politics is really centered in people, and a bit in these relationships and the way that we look out for each other. I know, especially myself as a progressive, I think that that's one of the core things, fight for somebody we don't know. Okay, right? Of course you're getting to know them now, but it comes from a place of, concern for your neighbors, and I think that has a lot to do with politics, and if it doesn't,
right.
It should.
And I also think that, if you know your neighbors and you know them on a level that's not, that's just like helping people out, they're more willing to, if you do get into politics, they're going to be more willing to talk about, or be able to share ideas about they'll be more receptive to perhaps progressive ideas. I think if you know them, if it's just not, you're not showing up at their doorstep and you're just starting out with a talk about politics. If you know them or their family or their just concerns, that's going to be better. So
Moving forward, I know that there was a car rally last week or a car protest. What are you guys calling it? Is it car protest?
I don't know if they have if they actually
Yeah,
did they
it's
have a
on
name.
my,
It's probably on the Facebook.
yeah, I have it
Oh
here.
yeah, I'm gonna need to link that in there as well.
What do they call it? Well, maybe they don't actually name it.
Oh, that's all right. Nope.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, yeah, it's like a car. It's like car protest. I
Car
mean,
protest,
yeah.
yes. And they had it today because somebody had heard that that the legislators were going to be meeting in a parking ramp
Near the Capitol.
out on the west side of the House of Representatives building, where they have their offices. There's a parking lot there. I mean, there's several parking lots,
ramp, yeah.
parking ramp, but there's parking ramp there, and that was the reported ramp that they were meeting in. So that is how they made the decision to have this
We don't actually know if they were there.
protest there. Yeah, we have no idea if they were there. Of course, they didn't come and look out the the sides of the parking ramp, so we didn't know. But I guess they were meeting and they were staying in their cars for social distancing. But that was supposedly where they met.
Another thing that groups like DSA and other groups have been doing is things called phone zaps. Have you heard of phone zaps?
I am not familiar. Tell me.
So a phone zap is actually a pretty interesting thing where you get a bunch of people who are called so you have one sort of overall captain or maybe a couple, and then you have a captain for every like block of like 2 hours or so, and then you have a person for every 5 minutes or so. And then so the person who's a captain who's like 2 hours, their job is to shepherd the people that are in their time block to make phone calls to these various people, right? So you're calling.
Well, we've had
we've done the
two.
governor. I've done more than two.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But we've called the governor, we called legislators, to try to get them, like, for example, and I don't know what effect these had, whether they actually caused things to happen, but like first one of the early calls was to suspend evictions, right? And then there were calls to
Caribou.
yeah, that was a recent one. It was a Caribou Coffee. The workers were wanting to get personal protective equipment and making it so that they don't have to really contact the public, that it can be like sort of that touchless kind of interaction and stuff like that. And you end up, and I don't know how people get these phone numbers. So they'll call and like, this guy's like, how do you have my personal phone number? I don't know. I'm just calling you, and he's some regional manager, they're kind of, mostly you just get like voicemails or mailbox full, but sometimes last time we were calling, or I was calling on, about people who were homeless, and they were calling park board members in Minneapolis. So Minneapolis is a little unusual. They actually have a separate elected body called the Park Board, which looks after the parks in Minneapolis. And so we're calling park board representatives, and to try to get them to put like washing stations and things like that for homeless people, so they have a place to clean up, right? And I actually talked to two park board members, had pretty long conversations with them, and that was really good. And so, like I said, a lot of times you don't get people, but sometimes you actually do, and you can have a conversation. And yeah, like I said, I don't, it's sort of, these are kind of things that it's like the car protest, it's something you can do from your house, and you can be safe about it, and you can apply some kind of pressure, right? Not the same as standing outside and yelling, but I don't know if that's any more effective than phone zaps. So phone zaps, yeah. So they're kind of fun, actually.
Yeah.
So Angie's you've done a couple?
I've done a couple. The last one I did was for Caribou Coffee. And I did get someone calling me back and saying, well, he was no longer a regional manager and to please take him off the list. He hadn't worked there for 10 years. So I don't actually know how he got on that list, but he was there. And
right.
Yeah, so I did let the person know who was my captain. I let them know that, well, this person isn't actually working for Caribou anymore.
Right. And I know we got some pushback, particularly when we were calling the governor and all the governor's staff and so on about, well, we need to keep these phone lines open because people need to be able to get through to us, and I mean, this is the whole point, is to apply pressure to make the normal functioning not function, right? And hopefully, they can make our voices heard. And most of the time we're advocating for, I mean, literally people that are in very bad situations, so I don't feel bad about disrupting things for, people that may get evicted or anything like that.
Absolutely. I appreciate so much, especially in this time, everyone is stuck inside, and you think about a protest or an action or something like that, and it seems almost impossible, because of the situation that we're in. And I think that it's really amazing and commendable that you guys are, that everybody's figuring out a way, to make an impact. Now, of course, I know that, with Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action, we try to lift up these kind of things, because the mainstream media doesn't generally pay attention to them. So especially in a situation like this, I think that it's important, that members of the independent media and the progressive media and whatnot, lift these things up, because it is, these are a lot of people, who've been left out of this, bailout. And of course, I think that it's amazing, and I appreciate what you guys are doing in lifting up their struggles and their situations. And I hope that, anybody watching this, if you are in Minnesota, around the Twin Cities area, or anywhere else in Minnesota and want to take a drive, why not? um, that you can look into this. I will link the information, below this video, so that you can find, the event information on, Facebook. If you follow, then if there are events coming up, then you'll be notified of those events and can choose that kind of thing. But that's really what we need to do, because you can't be going face to face. You can't be, organizing in kind of the traditional way that we do it. So, so you got to pay attention for these things. But thank you guys for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right, well, keep fighting.
Thank
This is
you.
Jody for Real Progress in Action. Thanks for watching, folks.